Our speaker this morning is Dr. Erica Elliott. She has written a book called Medicine and Miracles in the High Desert, My Life Among the Navajo People. This is the first of 4 memoirs that she's writing. It is exquisitely written. She's a wonderful writer. And you just can't believe, it seems, truly some of the stories in here seem so outrageous that you can't conceive of being present when all these things took place. I could read you from the back her incredible bio. It's 2 pages long. The things that she has done, the mountains that she's climbed, and the feats. I don't even know where she got the idea to do all of these things. So she's an astonishing human being. So please welcome, give a warm inside edge welcome to Dr. Erica Elliott.
Thank you, Diana, and I'm so happy to be here and to talk to you about this book because it's not just about me. It has a much larger message, a universal message about bridging cultural divide, bridging the divide between self and the other, whether the other is a person, a place, a culture. I've wanted to tell this story for almost 50 years, and I just didn't have time because I was busy being a doctor. Then when the current political situation got so bad and there was so much divisiveness and hate in our country and across the globe, I thought, what can I do? How can I make a difference? And I thought, now's the time to tell this story. I have to get this story out. This is a healing story. It seems like it's the story of the adventures of Erica Elliott, but it's much bigger than that. It's much bigger. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the time to put this into a book unless I thought it could make a difference in the world. So I took the path less traveled, and often I took it because I had, quote, made a mistake. And the mistake turned out, each time I made a mistake, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So one of my books is going to be titled, Never Waste a Bad Experience. And that's the story of my life. So I made a mistake, what I thought was a mistake, coming out to the reservation. And it turned out to be the most profound, other than having my son, the most profound, transformative experience of my life. But it started out as a huge mistake. I was recently graduated from Antioch College. That was a mistake going there too. Because I was a nice girl who, went to high school in Germany. My father was a general. My mother was from old school Swiss, so you can imagine. And when it was time to choose college, they all looked the same in the catalog. And because I was in Germany. And so when I was hitchhiking around, staying at youth hostels when I lived in Germany, I would come across occasionally these really unusual people who dressed kind of like they were gypsies or something, and they'd play musical instruments, and they were so sophisticated politically and socially. I would listen to them for hours talk about things I didn't know anything about. And I thought, wow, these are interesting people. And they said they went to a place called Antioch College. And they also said they got credit for traveling around. So I think this is the place for me. So when I told my college counselor, my American college counselor, that I already knew where I was going to go to school and told her I was going to go to Antioch, she gasped and said, that's no place for a nice girl like you. I said, why not? And she said, they smoke marijuana. I had no idea what that was, but it sounded interesting. And then I said, well, is that the reason why I shouldn't go there? And she said, well, no, it gets worse. The boys and girls sleep in the same dorms. And I said, what's wrong with that? It's like, your brother is in the room next door. He said, well, that's not right. You should go to a school like Vassar or Radcliffe. This is not a school for you. Then I was really interested. And so I went there, and when I got there, it turned my world upside down. I couldn't even speak the kind of English they were speaking. And they say, have you ever dropped acid? And I thought, well, maybe in chemistry class I might have. So I couldn't speak their English. I looked funny. I was in a mini skirt and a purse and heels, and I felt like a freak compared to all these people. And I thought, wow, I made a really big mistake, and I'm going to make sure my parents never come here. And so, anyway, it was so progressive in the flagrant 60s. And so they were trying out different systems. And here I was, with a very rigid education, rigid upbringing. And you can imagine my world just completely turned upside down. And I tried to make sense of what I was seeing, and it just didn't fit anything I had known before. And I didn't know what was happening in the U.S. in the 60s because I was in Europe. So I was in total shock for the first year and thought I'd landed on Mars. And so they were trying out this system where you took a test, and if you got a high enough score, you got to test out of your requirements. So I tested out of all my requirements because I had a really good education in Germany. And so I was free to do whatever I wanted. I didn't know what freedom was. I didn't know how to handle freedom. And so I just took all art courses and piano lessons and advanced French literature and sculpture and Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. And so when I was ready to graduate, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to make a living? And so last minute, I switched to education, and I got my teaching certificate. And so then I looked through the trade journals, and I saw this opening for a fourth grade teacher in a very remote area near Canyon de Chelly, Arizona, in a town called Chinle, near nothing. It was in the middle of nowhere. And for some reason, I thought, I'm going to go there. See, Antioch had sort of done something to my head. And so it wasn't all bad. It had some really good effects because I was so fallen apart that I could rebuild myself in a way that was more in alignment with me and not in alignment with my parents and the culture I was raised in. That's the benefit of falling apart. You get a chance to rebuild. And so now I was free to be whoever I wanted. I could do whatever I wanted. I had no chains, cultural chains binding me, I wasn't indoctrinated anymore. And so I thought, this is what I want to do. And people say, why? That doesn't make any sense. I said, I don't know. I just have a feeling that's where I should go. So I applied, and I didn't hear anything back from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They had a boarding school there. And they said, boarding schools have a really bad reputation for how they treat Indians. You shouldn't go there. And the more they said I shouldn't go there, the more interested I was. That's how I am. I am contrary. And so I decided, since I hadn't heard from them, I would take this opportunity to travel around the country with my dog. And I'm stopping because I'm easily distracted. No, I'm not trying to embarrass you. My brain is easily distracted. So I think it's funny, actually. Don't worry. Okay, very good. So let's see, where was I? So I was with my. You didn't hear from them, so Yeah, I didn't hear. So I was traveling with my dog and across the country, and I felt like I was really getting to know America because Antioch is sort of not real a place, you know, it's sort of its own reality. So I was getting to know America. And so I traveled all over. I went to Europe to visit my Swiss relatives too. And when I finally, a year later, landed in Santa Monica to visit my sister, there was a letter from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It was an acceptance letter a year later. And so my sister said, oh, I'm sure they have somebody by then. I said, well, I'm going to call them anyway. So I called them, and this was after the year had begun. This was a position for a fourth grade teacher. The principal said, we want you now. Come right. I said, don't you want to interview me? Just come now. And I said, okay. And my sister said, are you kidding? They didn't get any response in a year? That's a bad sign. And so I said, I don't care. I'm going. But why would you do something like that? It doesn't make any sense. I said, I don't know. And that was the story of my life. I don't know. I just have a strong feeling. And then again, it was what I thought was another mistake. And when I got there, because it was, in my mind, coming from New England, it looked awful. It was just all just a desert, and there wasn't much green, and the people they looked like they were from another era, from the 1950s. They looked like cowboys. They wore cowboy boots and cowboy hats and drove pickup trucks, and out of their windows was, she's a good-hearted woman in love with her good-timing man. She loves him in spite of his wicked ways, which she don't understand. Oh, my God. This is oh, my God. I can't relate to any of this stuff. And then then in the classroom, my first day in the classroom was a total disaster. None of the kids looked at me. There were 36 kids in the room, and they're all looking down, and the girls, all their black hair was falling on their desk like this, and they didn't talk to me. And I thought, what's going on here? And so I thought, maybe they're deaf. So good morning, class. My name is Miss Elliott. Nothing happened. Oh, my God. And so then I looked at my seating chart, and I said, oh, you're Billy Begay. And it was as though I'd shot him. He was like this. I thought, oh, my God, things went from bad to worse. And you'll read about it here, so I'm not going to tell you all the incredibly weird things that happened. No, and the white teachers, they were all old. That was like in their 50s. That was old to me. I was like, a young girl and just out of college. And so these teachers looked like they hated being there. They looked bored. And the kids in their class didn't speak English. And so it was, I thought, oh boy, I really made a big mistake. And this went on for a week. I called my father up. I said, Pa, I really made a big mistake. I'm coming home. And he said, you've only been there a week. And I said, it's the wrong place. It's not for me. It's desolate. The kids don't talk to me. Nobody in town talks to me. They don't smile. And they all sound like they're mad at each other. And that's because the language sounds like that. They weren't really mad at each other, but I didn't know that. And because it's all and like they're and so he said, you shouldn't come home. You can't judge a place or people in 1 week. Why don't you stay there 3 months, and then if you're miserable, you're still miserable, you come home and look for a job somewhere around in this area. I said, okay. And so I thought, oh, I'm definitely going to be coming home after 3 months. This is just, I don't even know how I'm going to get through these 3 months. Well, so then something extraordinary happened. teacher aide, Donna Scott, who's the sister of a very famous artist, a late artist, R.C. Gorman. She was assimilated into white culture, and she knew both cultures very well, spoke English very well. She saw how frustrated I was, and she said to me, "Would you like to know about my people?" I said, "Yes, I haven't gotten any orientation. I don't know anything about Navajo people. The BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, didn't give me any information, no manual, no sheet, no nothing. This isn't working out." And she said, "Well, I want to help you understand what happened the first day when you showed up." So she went through all my cultural mistakes and blunders, but in a kind way. She was trying to help me. She wasn't criticizing. They don't do that. They're very Oriental, Asian type in their politeness, unless under the influence of alcohol. They're incredibly respectful and kind. And so this was all done with huge respect. And she said, they didn't look at you for two reasons. These are boarding school kids. They don't see white people. They're not like the public school kids. Public school kids know about white people. These people live in remote areas in the canyon, and so they're very shy. They're incredibly shy. And not only that, that is the traditional, these are traditional kids. They come from traditional families. They have not been assimilated into white culture. They don't know about white ways, and they're showing you respect by not looking at you, by looking down. Well, whoa. I felt so ashamed of myself for all the judgments in my mind about these strange kids. I just thought, oh my God, I've got to learn more. And then she said, "And they didn't talk to you because they don't speak English." I thought, oh my God, they're in the 4th grade and they don't speak English? And she said, well, some of them, have teachers who don't know how to teach. It's all Dick and Jane kind of stuff that they can't relate to. And many times they have to go home because the mother had a baby and they need help herding sheep and stuff. So the kids in the classroom age from 9 to 15, depending on how much they were needed at home. And then she said, if you really want to make a difference and not be like the other teachers who have no relationship with the children, she was very honest. She said, why don't you try to learn just a few words in Navajo? So I said, okay, I want to. Now I was getting really interested. And she also explained why when I said, are you Billy Begay? And he acted like I'd shot him to death. And she said, you never point to a traditional Navajo. That's like singling them out and making them exposed to being hexed or something. They believed in witchcraft and so forth. And that was the worst thing I could do. And she showed me how to do it next time. You go with your, like over there, with your lips. That's how you point. And so she taught me a few words that day. And it was not a written language then. There was no books I could read or tapes or anything. I was on my own. I had to listen really carefully to what she was saying. And there are sounds that don't exist in European languages and English. And it was so hard for me. She taught me how to say, good morning, my children. My name is Erica Elliott. What's your name and where do you come from? And to point with my lips. So I went home that night and I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, making all these very strange sounds, looking in the mirror going, and so I think I stayed up till midnight or something, looking in the mirror and making these sounds. And I walked in the next day, everybody was looking down, and I stood in front of the class, and I said, Yat e shalchina shi e Erica Elliott yishne nisha khashinlye khatenana. Everybody looked up, the whole sea of faces looked up at me and just stared for a minute. This is the first time we made eye contact. And then the whole room burst out laughing. The girls went like this. And that was the beginning of a total love affair that changed my life. Because then what happened, I'm getting goosebumps when I'm telling the story, because as I'm telling you, I relive it. And so, sometimes I cry when I tell the story, because it so changed my life for the better. And it helped me find part of why I'm on this earth, what my purpose is, which is to care about other people. I didn't know what vehicle until I found medicine, and not mainstream medicine. That I lasted 10 years, and I thought, this isn't my purpose in life, to give out pills. I need to really have a relationship with my patients, love them, care for them, and find the underlying reason of why they feel bad, instead of just giving them pills and not listening to what's really going on with them. And so here's what happened. Every day became so magical to me. And shortly after that breaking through to them, the bravest boy in the class, which was Billy Begay. You're Billy Begay. See, I'm reliving it. You're Billy Begay. So Billy Begay was the bravest boy in the class and probably knew the most English. So after the day was over, he walked up to me and he said, they couldn't say Miss Elliott. That was too hard for them. So they called me Elliott, E-L-L-T. Elliott. So he walked up to my desk and he actually looked into my eyes. That's very bold. So for them, for their traditional, these are traditional Navos, as opposed to Navajo people who live with white people. And he said, take me home. And I said, take you home? And he said, oh, that means yes. And I said, well, you mean check you out of the boarding school? Oh, you mean like this weekend? Oh, and take you to your family? Oh. So that's what I did. I did all the paperwork to check him out, and I took him to his home and discovered the most beautiful part of the country I'd ever seen in my life, Canyon de Chelly. Oh my God. And I just thought, wow, I was so ignorant when I got there. I didn't see all this beauty. It's everywhere. It's the most gorgeous rock formations. It's like timeless, out of time. And I took my four-wheel drive Bronco down there and took him way into the back country where Spider Rock is, the famous Spider Rock. It's famous in their creation story. And I had the time of my life. You know, I didn't understand. It was only Navajo spoken. These are very traditional families. And we had a great time. We had jokes. I didn't understand the jokes, but I laughed, and then they'd laugh, and then I'd laugh harder, and they'd laugh harder. And pretty soon, we were doubled over laughing without a clue what the other one was saying. And we went horseback riding, bareback, and we raced through the canyon with Billy Begay and his brothers. It was an incredible experience. And then when I was back in the classroom on Monday, I decided we were not going to do Dick and Jane books. They were meaningless to these children. So we put them aside, and we made our own materials. The children, once they saw I was trying to speak Navajo, They wanted me to learn so badly. They teach me every day, and then I teach them English. And then they learned English so fast. They had reached the 4th grade without speaking English. Can you imagine? And all of a sudden, they were speaking like crazy. And I kept newspaper articles to prove what I'm about to say because it's so shocking. They won English contests in the local town. I entered some of them, and they won first prizes for poetry. Can you believe it? It was totally amazing, and it's because of caring. They wanted me desperately to know about their lives because they knew I cared. They knew I cared enough to even try to speak their language and go to their homes. By the way, so every weekend I checked out a different kid, and I saw things that white people never see. I participated fully in their ceremonies. I was totally taken in by them. And one family said I was their adopted child, and they took me to their peyote ceremonies. Well, you'll read some outrageous things that happen that are beyond white people's reality of what's possible. Totally beyond what we have as consensus reality. I saw things that I was told just are impossible. Instant healing. I saw it. And even if I can't explain it, I saw it. I can't pretend it didn't happen. Because it happened to me too. And so we, after that first day of taking Billy Begay to his home, we came back on Monday. So I had made a decision, we're going to make our own materials from their own experience. And so I asked the children, they knew exactly what happened because word went around really fast in the boarding school. So they asked me, did I see any coyotes? Did I like the mutton stew? Did I fall off the horse? They were quizzing me. And I say, you have to say it in English. And so then I asked them, I gave them all a sheet of paper and some crayons, and I said that since they all knew about what happened at Billy Begay's, I asked them to draw a picture of it, and at the bottom to write two sentences. And they had known what a sentence means and stuff like that. And some wrote one word, some wrote one sentence, some wrote 3 sentences, some you couldn't read what they wrote. And so all different levels. But what really caught my eye was I'm going to start crying. It's so sweet. It was a picture of Kenyon Deshay. These were good artists. These kids were really good artists. And it was horses racing through the bottom of the canyon. And on one of the horses was a girl. And her ponytail was straight out like this, and she was clinging for dear life with the mane, and underneath it says, "My teacher." Teechir. It was so sweet. It was so sweet. So I wondered why the principal allowed me to take all these liberties, because the other teachers had to follow the curriculum, the Dick and Jane type of books, to the letter. And he was letting me get away with things like taking, what do you call it? School expeditions, field trips. Taking field trips to different things and then coming back and writing about it in English. And then I found out why he was giving me so much liberty. Is because he was talking to people in Washington, D.C., because there was this new concept in America about bilingual, bicultural education. And he told about this teacher, this young woman teacher who was learning Navajo and doing really unusual things in the classroom. And Washington said, we'll pay for her to get bilingual, bicultural education at Northern Arizona University, and then her classroom will be a pilot program. And so that's what happened. But the classes at Northern Arizona University, I was already doing all those things. And so I didn't really learn anything. So anyway, I could go on and on because this was so deeply impactful in my life and affected the rest of my life. I'll just fast forward a little bit. After 2 years, I did not want to finish my master's at NAU and go sit in a classroom in the hot summer and learn stuff I already knew. So, even though they paid for it. So the white teachers there thought I was absolutely out of my mind. They didn't understand why I was in love with the reservation, why I was in love with these kids. They were stuck where I was the first week. That's how they were waiting to retire so they could get their nice pension from the government. They were GS something, you go up, and I don't remember that because I didn't care. And then when I told them I was going to retire to be a sheep herder, they thought she is really crazy. And so that's what I did. I lived with a family that spoke no English, except they knew how to say water, and because water was so important. And I had 594 sheep and goats, and my horse Jimmy, that's on the cover of the book. This is Jimmy and me, my horse, and he was my therapist. So Diana asked how, wasn't it boring out there and so hot and all those insects and stuff? It was, but I was doing, at the same time I was perfecting my Navajo. That's why I really did it, because I wanted to speak totally fluent Navajo and live like really traditional Navajos live. But also, it looked like it would be kind of boring, but I had a rich inner life going on, trying to discover what my purpose in life was, where I go from here. And I knew I was getting partway there to finding my purpose, was service to others and caring about others, but in what vehicle? So my whole trajectory was finding my true purpose, which I'm living my purpose now, which is incredibly meaningful. That's why I have no reason to retire. You don't ask an artist, when are you going to retire? Because they love what they do. I love my patients. I love what I do. It's terribly meaningful to me. And so what I was doing, herding sheep, is I was talking to Jimmy. He was my therapist, and he was very respectful. He didn't talk back or give me advice. He let me figure out my own problems. And he'd just snort once in a while. I didn't know whether that was approval or disapproval. And Jimmy and I had a very close relationship. When I first got there, he did not like me. He sensed I was white, and he bit me. And then we became very close friends, and he had a great sense of humor. He liked to play tricks on me, and I think he thought it was very funny. Like, for example, when I'd go in the morning to saddle him up, it took me a while to realize what he was doing. And he'd inflate his belly really big, and then I put on the saddle, girth it up, and then I'd get on to go, and he'd let all the air out. And I'd fall backwards, and the saddle would fall on me, and I could tell it was his way of laughing. He thought it was so funny. And then he did other tricks on me, too. This is until we became very close friends. And so he wanted to eat all the time while we're walking, herding sheep. And so he'd stop and eat, and I'd say, Jimmy, you can't eat when we're doba eat, oh yashonda, hey ya, ush, think on. And so he plod along. He was really bored herding sheep, and so he just wanted to eat. So he played this trick, like he had to pee. So he'd go like this. You know how horses do? They spread way out like this before they pee. So he'd go like that, and of course I'm going to stop to let him pee. And then he'd go eat. So he was a scream. And when I came back, years and years, I went into the Peace Corps, and I was working with Quechua-speaking Indians up there, helping them develop bilingual materials up high in the Andes in Ecuador. And when I came back and realized my path was in medicine, I was looking for a place after I finished my studies to pay back my National Health Service Corps education. They paid for me because I had no money when I came back from the Peace Corps. And so when I applied to medical school, I told them, you know, I don't have money, and I'm not going to end up with big loans because I want to treat poor people, and if I have big loans, I have to be a corporate doctor, and I don't want to do that. And so they said, okay, we'll give you a full scholarship for the first 2 years, and the last 2 years, the National Health Service Corps will pay for your education, and then you reimburse by serving in a very remote, underserved, understaffed, underfunded, under everything kind of place. And so I was looking for a place, and I went out near Shiprock, Arizona, New Mexico, and looking at the Shiprock Indian Health Service Hospital as a possible place. I ended up serving in Cuba, New Mexico. Half my patients were Navajo. But when I was in the Shiprock area where I was herding sheep, I went to find the old grandmother. I knew the old man had died, and I was walking around. It looked like nobody was home, and then I heard this whinny, and this was many years later, and it was Jimmy. He smelled me, and I went over. Oh my God, we had the most heartfelt reunion, and he just kept nuzzling me, like, get on me, and I wish I could just get on him and ride off into the sagebrush and forget everything. And but anyway, that was so heartfelt, our reunion. And then I wandered around, and I went into one of the doors. It looked like nobody was home. And then I heard a screech in Navajo. Yeah, that means, oh my God. And it was the grandma, and she was in the back of the house. And I walked up closely, and her eyes, she was completely blind. They're all white from cataracts. She couldn't see anything. And I said, hello. I just said 2 words. Hello, grandmother. Yate shimasana. And she said, with no pause, you've come back to herd sheep. And I said, I said in Navajo, no, I wanted to say I'm a doctor, and I hadn't spoken Navajo in so long I forgot how to say doctor. By the way, how you say doctor is very revealing in Navajo. If a white doctor is a zehlini, which means he who gives out pills. That's how they saw us. He who gives out pills. And that's actually pretty accurate. But so I couldn't think of that word. So I tried to substitute. So I said, no, grandmother, I'm not back to herd sheep. I'm now a medicine man. And she said, oh my God, she thought, and she had no teeth, and she laughed. And then she said, where's your husband? And I said, Aten, I don't have one. And she said, Bilagana Todi geese. White people sure are crazy. So anyway, I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask if you have any questions. 15 minutes left? You want me to keep talking? Okay, so what'd you say? You can pitch a tent here. Oh, okay. Okay, you can call. Let's have an encampment. And so anyway, just show you how when you make mistakes in life, it can turn out to be you've chosen the road less traveled, and it could be your road. Tell me about when you went as a doctor. Oh yeah. This is great. Okay, so I'm gonna read you something. Now I had an accident and my eyes don't work very well, and so I had a snowboarding accident when I was 58, and so I'll just try to do my best to read this. It's the first chapter. It's the first chapter, and it's called The Dead Medicine Man. It's when I went back as a doctor to pay back my obligation. And it was in Cuba, New Mexico. And in those days, it was in the middle of nowhere. But I chose it because my patients would be Navajo. Okay. The Dead Medicine Man, Cuba, New Mexico, 1986. It was early summer, monsoon season, when I began my first job as a medical doctor, fresh out of training in family practice. An overcast sky greeted me on the day of my arrival, along with thunder and lightning. Overhead, a dark cloud released a curtain of rain that poured down hard against my car, driven by gusts of wind. Within minutes, the red clay road turned into slick mud. My two-wheel drive Honda slid from one side of the road to another as I struggled up the long incline toward my new home in the foothills of the Jemez Mountains, overlooking the little town of Cuba, located in a remote area of northern New Mexico. A four-wheel drive pickup truck sailed past me. The driver peered through the side window at me, no doubt wondering about the newcomer snaking around in the mud. After I finally reached the two-room adobe house that I had rented sight unseen, I spent the next few hours hauling my belongings into the musty, mouse-infested building. By the late afternoon, as the sun was low on the horizon, I decided to take a break and drive back down the road to town. I wanted to introduce myself to the doctor on duty and other staff members at the clinic. I hopped back into my muddy car. The steep, slippery road meandered through spectacular scenery with otherworldly rock formations and towering ponderosa pine trees. The invigorating, crisp mountain air smelled delicious, even in the rain. As the road rapidly descended, the landscape became more typical of the high desert, dotted with sagebrush and interspersed with pinon and juniper trees. Rabbits darted in and out of my peripheral vision as I concentrated on keeping my wheels outside the deeply carved ruts in the road. Once I finally turned off the bumpy dirt road and reached the pavement, I spotted a series of long, low, ramshackle buildings made of partially rotted wood with tin roofs. The sign in front read, "The Cuba Health Center." The building housed a 9-bed hospital along with a busy emergency room and outpatient clinic. I tried to enter what looked like the front door, but found it locked. I knocked on the door, no answer. I knocked louder and waited while the rain beat down on me. A Hispanic emergency medical technician in blue scrubs opened the door a crack, stuck his head out, and said, "What do you want?" Taken aback, I responded warily, "I'm the new doctor." He looked me over briefly, then opened the door wide to let me in. He said, "We've been waiting for you." He had a mischievous smile on his face that I did not know how to interpret. The EMT led me to a small room where the medical practitioners wrote in their charts at the end of the day. Inside the room, the doctor on duty sat leaning back in the chair with his feet on the desk. His piercing green eyes looked me over from head to toe in a friendly and flirtatious way. Then he took his feet off the desk, sat up in his chair, and said, "Hi, Erica. My name is Bill. You have no idea how glad we are to see you. I'm ready for a break from this place." Bill had been trained in emergency medicine. The administration in Santa Fe hired him on a temporary basis to work at the clinic until a permanent doctor could be found, someone willing to serve time in this isolated stretch of the Southwest. It was a few minutes past 5 o'clock. I asked Bill, When do you get to go home and get some rest? His answer took me by surprise. I'm going home right now. You're on call tonight. We'll be alternating night on duty. It's just you and me, Doc. Tommy here will show you around, he said, gesturing to the EMT who had let me in. He's one of our best EMTs. Good luck. I could never have imagined what was waiting for me that night. Before Tommy went off duty for the evening, he gave me a tour of the facility. We walked down the dark, poorly ventilated hallways, stopping intermittently for cursory introductions to the various staff members as they were leaving for the day. After the brief tour, Tommy turned to me and said matter-of-factly, "You'll be on night duty, starting now until tomorrow morning. Then you'll be seeing patients in the clinic all day. Good luck." I noted that both Tommy and Bill had commonly ended their sentences with "good luck." Tommy's casually dispensed news that my tour of duty was about to begin at that very moment made my mouth go dry. And my heart race. Before my senses could register what was happening, the clinic began to pulse with action as patients came in after hours to be seen for their ailments. On his way out the door, Tommy added that a Navajo medicine man had been run over repeatedly with a vengeance by a drunken acquaintance in a truck. The crime happened in front of a bar about 30 miles away. The driver had been charged with attempted murder. Oh, I forgot to mention that the 2 EMTs we sent out to get the medicine man are stuck in the mud. One of them just radioed and wants to know what he should do. Not having a clue what the stuck EMT should do, I asked Tommy how they would normally handle this situation. Well, we would send out our other ambulance, but the battery's dead. Oh, a third EMT managed to recharge the dead battery, then sped off into the last light of the sun. I bolted into the trauma room to make a quick study of where everything was located while I waited anxiously for their return. A kind nurse practitioner, fairly new to Cuba, stayed and helped me get set up. As we were running back and forth from the supply room to the trauma room, I noticed something odd at the end of the long, unlit hall. Water was trickling in under the clinic's main entrance door. The stream of advancing water looked like a snake slithering sideways towards me, ever expanding in its width. The nurse practitioner looked at my bewildered face. The maintenance man was supposed to... Okay, just tell the story. The maintenance man was supposed to take care of that problem of the water seeping in. And so pretty soon it reached my feet. And at the same time, they brought the medicine man in on a gurney, and he was DOA, dead on arrival. Now, if I was an experienced emergency room doctor, which I was not, I was trained in family practice, delivering babies, treating sore throats and earaches. I had no training in emergency medicine. So imagine how I felt being thrown into this situation that was far over my head. And so if I had training in emergency medicine and somebody was DOA, dead on arrival, you say, oh, that's very sad, and and that's it. But in my ignorance and seeing all these Navajo people who were his relatives coming in, and they were expecting me to resuscitate this dead man, I went all out. I put a tube in every orifice. And I mean, I did things that I was only trained to do on mannequins and anesthetized dogs. We were really cruel to dogs. It was horrible, but I had no choice. If you protested, you were asked to leave school. So I had to do all these cruel things to dogs, and but so at least I knew what to do, even though I wasn't trained as an ER doc 5 minutes, and so I asked the EMT to call UNM, University of New Mexico, because they have a flight for life. So they called in the trauma surgeon, and he flew in, but it takes an hour. In the meantime, I was dealing with this very primitive situation. When I was trying to intubate him, put a tube down so we could breathe for him, they had no tube. And so I knew stories from Vietnam about the medics and all those heroic things they did. So I said, anybody have a ballpoint pen? And so the EMT did, and I took out and stuck it in here. And we did mouth-to-pen resuscitation on this guy. And then finally somebody found a tube. And it was so shocking. It was like working in some remote part of India or China or something. It's unbelievable how primitive this place was. So I was dealing with ancient equipment, and I was dealing with my own inexperience. It was horrifying. And somehow I survived. But all these Navajo family members came in, and they were complaining, because how do I know? Because the EMTs and the nurse practitioners would tell me what they're saying, and they were mad because they always got these inexperienced doctors. And they were mad because I couldn't resuscitate their dead relative. He was dead on arrival. So anyway, when the trauma surgeon arrived, I said, we've given up. I'm sorry, it's too late. And I gave him a report, and he was highly caffeinated, ready to jump into action. I said, here's the guy, tube in every orifice. And I said, we've just given up. And he said, you did a really good job. Only 1% of people found in the field without a pulse are ever resuscitated. Good job. And then he left and flew back. Okay, I have to end now, but this is how it ends. So the family, I had to go in and tell the family that's it. We can't do anything more. He's really dead. He was already dead, and now he's even more dead. So I gave them a bag with the medicine man headband and his earrings and necklace and belt and a few dollar bills, handed it to the family, and then I talked to the family. I was very choked up, partly because I was exhausted. I'd worked all night, and partly because I was overwhelmed, and partly because I felt sad for them. They lost their relative. And so I was very choked up, and I started talking to them, and they were hostile looking. And then I started talking Navajo. They completely changed their demeanor. They were smiling, and at the end they lined up to shake my hand. It was amazing how everything changed when I said I was sorry in Navajo about their relative and the medicine man. And so that morning I knew I was so exhausted, but I knew I had to, treat about 60 people in the clinic that come. So I went to the convenience store, and back then I did eat junk food. I don't do it anymore. But I was trying to caffeinate myself and had a donut and coffee in the convenience store so I could resuscitate myself to keep working. And a tall Navajo man came, and he was in the group that of the relatives of the dead medicine man, and he walked towards me, and I thought, oh no, he's going to criticize me. And he sat down. He said, may I sit here? And I said, yes. And he sat down and he said, in Navajo, he said, thank you so much. And he said, why do you speak Navajo? And then I said, well, it's a very long story. And that's how it goes into chapter 2, telling the story.